Hello internet, I am not remaking the Wrecking Ball video. This right here is the cheapest 2-ton engine crane that I could find on the internet. And it seems to be working. Currently, I have a generator on it, a bag of cement over here, 25 kilos. So there's about 75 kilos there, plus me, another 75 kilos, which is about 150. Okay, 75 kilos 10 years ago. Let's say 150 kilos. Well, it handles that fine at the half-ton level. But I would probably downrate this a little bit. Let me explain how I put this together and give a little review of this Schwitzer. Yeah, this engine crane. I don't know what it's called. I paid about £170 for this. I'll put on the screen what that is in dollars and euros. Now, should you buy the cheapest engine crane that you can find? Well, we'll find out. I will tell you what it took to build this and what I think of it, and we'll put it to some test. I need to get down from here. Can I have some help? Please? It just wants to swing. Oh, that's the door. Now, I planned on building this on camera, but I didn't get the opportunity. So I'll explain to you what we have to do. This section of right here, yes, this half page, that is our instructions on how to build this. A very few simple steps. And it basically says to follow this on the back. Yeah. So that was actually mentioned in reviews that the instructions are a bit of a challenge. But to me, if you're the sort of person that's going to be using an engine crane, then you probably don't need instructions, hey? So we'll just, yeah, throw them over there. No, seriously, we will actually need these. Before we do this, maybe we should actually drop this down. Okay, so step one of the instructions was to assemble all the parts according to the exploded diagram in the manual. Well, there you are. We had 3 boxes. That was quite good because it spread the weight. They're not especially packaged well, so the boxes tend to rip apart, but everything turned up. We got it in 2 different deliveries over 2 days. Who knows? But then the second thing that you've got to do is install the wheels in the corners. Now, the wheels is interesting because you're gonna need a magnet or really long fingers. Let me explain a little bit closer down here. Okay, so these wheels slot through the box section, but the furthest ones are just that bit too far in for you to be able to get your hand in there while also putting the bolt through. Because realistically, you want this frame upside down, otherwise you're just not going to be able to balance anything. So be prepared to need a magnet to hold the nut and the washer upside down inside a spanner. You potentially could use a socket as well, but I used the socket on the outside. Okay, so the wheels are a potential design flaw. It's not so much a design flaw, it just hasn't really been thought out to make your life a little bit easier. But for 170 odd pounds, that's not a problem at all, okay? Now, I've gone and put the instructions down somewhere and I've been looking around this garage and I cannot find them. But that just highlights the point that instructions, we don't need those. We're manly men building engine cranes. I can't believe I've made it to my early 30s and only just owned an engine crane. Oh, I feel so manly right now. If we had the instructions, it would tell us next to put the legs together with the main base. Effectively, you just build up. The other place that you could become a little unstuck, but the instructions have a separate page for this, is this main beam along with its 2 side struts. You build together loose and then tighten up. You're going to need some pretty big wrenches to do this. I think some of the bolts are 27 mils. So, I don't know, decent size. Obviously, if you're gonna have an engine crane, you're gonna have that in your toolkit. Now, how many engines have I got to move with this, I hear you ask? Well, the answer's none. That's right, none. I mean, I've had the test engine on the generator, but engine cranes are not just for lifting engines. There's other things you can lift with those as well. It's down. So we will put this to good use and find out its capabilities later in the video. So moving on, you then attach the beam across. The inner part sits in it for delivery and you just set that where you want. And then the last thing is to attach the hydraulic jack. It tells us it's an 8-ton long ram jack. This engine crane gives us a few positions. We've got 2 ton, 1.5 ton, 1 ton and 1/2 ton. Would I use it at those ratings? Probably not. But we do have a 1/2 ton load to lift and we are going to try it on the 1/2 ton because I need the reach. I would say that when you compare this to some of the bigger and more expensive engine cranes, there's definitely a difference in the weight. And I think that's the biggest thing. While this is a sturdy, generally well-built engine crane, I think that it's probably 30 kilograms lighter than the more expensive 2-ton engine cranes, which means I would probably downrate this if it was me. Of course, like any engine crane, you're not going to get under it, and the sort of loads these lift, you generally stick out the way while it's being moved. The jack itself operates nicely, easily lifts this load like it's butter. I've hung on this with my son jacking this up and he hasn't noticed any difference in jacking it up, and it jacks down nicely as well. In terms of moving it around with the load in the air, it seems to move okay. I have this on concrete slabs and it rolls around just fine. The one thing I would like is perhaps some better way of pulling it around than these bars. They're thin kind of bars and it just doesn't feel the nicest grip. But again, for £175, bearing in mind the chains that are the other end of there cost £100. So when you consider I've got the entire engine crane for not much more, I'm not complaining at all. Another, shall we say, feature of a cheap engine crane, which I find a little bit frustrating, is as soon as you get it out of the box and use it, you will scrape the paint off the welds in the areas like this. Why? Well, because of the design. The design means that this naturally wants to crush, which means it's going to be tight on this. And ultimately, it's probably just a Chinese copy of something better. And that means that it's never done quite as well. But again, I maintain that for the money, this is a fantastic buy. Now, I purchased this Switzer? Yeah, we'll go with that. This Switzer 2-ton engine crane with my own money. This is not a sponsored video. Nobody has sent me this. But I thought, since we're going to be using it, why not do a review, hey? There's got to be at least 4 people on the internet that might want to buy an engine crane. Now, I have the option of hiring one, but in my use case, it may end up doing its job for a few weeks, and hiring one is probably not going to work out because the load that I'm going to bring in here is going to get brought in, rested on the ground on some pallets, and then eventually it will get moved into a different position. Now, if I owned a shop or garage, would I buy this? Would I buy a cheap 2-ton engine crane? Well, really, it's going to depend on your use case. If you're going to be using it all the time, then no. Spend more money on a more expensive, high quality, extremely heavy duty one. But this is more than capable for the DIYer. For the guy that's going to use it once every so often, and then maybe lift the legs up and store it for a while, this is perfect. This is value for money. Hey, it may even be useful for those that do run garages and workshops, and let me know in the comments if you've used one of the Chinese copies in your garage in the comments below, or if you've seen them. I'll be really intrigued to know. Now, this sort of lifting apparatus is useful for all sorts of things, not just engines, hey? But of course, engines is its main use. So I'm going to be using it a little bit out of its spec. I have quite a long, wide load that's very flat that I plan on using. Those that have been watching my channel for the last few weeks will know what that is about. Let's see how it handles about 500 kilograms on the 500 kilogram setting over there. Put it to its test, eh? Now, if we remove the pin that goes through the front of the leg, we can then bring this leg back and it will tuck away. It will tuck all the way back and rest on the metal at the bottom here. You can, of course, pull the second pin out and take that out the way altogether. Do the same with the other one. And there we are with our locking bolts out. We can stow the legs away. We can pop these back in here. And then it easily wheels around. Now, of course, I could tuck it in a little bit further by unbolting a 1/2 ton extension and moving it into the 2 ton. But that's another thing. Some of the more expensive ones do have the option of some other type of locking mechanism for that instead of having to get your 27mm wrenches out to undo that. But overall, it doesn't take up too much space. It's not a lot of money. It doesn't just move engines, it can move other stuff. And it does exactly what you want it to do. And so far for me, that thing has not dropped down and killed anybody. Now, I had even considered options on Alibaba, and although they were a bit cheaper, with the postage it actually made it more expensive than this. So what do I think of the cheapest 2-ton engine crane that I could find? Perfect for what I need. Yes, the more expensive ones might be a little bit heavier, or they might have some extra features like a handle to move things around. The instructions might make them a little bit easier to put together, but I'm not being funny. There are 10 main bolts and a few casters to put on. The sort of people that are going to be using a device like this, they're more than capable of doing that. The little challenges in perhaps not thinking through the design to put it together are well worth it for the money. I almost can't believe in today's day and age of everything costing so much that you can buy all that metal, that hydraulic ram, for that level of money. When you consider that the chains alone were about £100 and that's 170. Now, thank you for watching this short video in my garage, while my garage still has space, where we've reviewed these types of engine cranes, and in particular the Switzer, that's it. The Switzer 2-ton engine crane. I hope this has helped somebody. You know, it will make maintenance on this generator a bit easier. I can just lift it up to my eye level and do an oil change without bending down, eh? Just an excuse to play with toys. Anyway, that's me off. Battery man out.